Hello everyone, this is Tim.
And this is Dane.
And welcome to Was It Worth It, brought to you by SharcTank. That's shark with a C for chill.
For chillin'. Chillaxin'.
For cool chillin'.
So we're a couple of cool guys.
Double C. Okay, so Was It Worth It is a show where we play a game, we talk about it, and then we tell you whether or not it's worth it. The game we played this week was, drumroll please.
This week we played Freedom Fall, an action platformer developed and published by Stirfire Studios. It was greenlit on Steam, and you can purchase it right now for $9.99. Now, while Stirfire Studios certainly helped move this game towards a commercial release, Freedom Fall was actually the brainchild of Lisa Rai, a fantastic artist who served as creative director and tackled pretty much every creative aspect of the game, from story to character and level design. And I'd like to add that those creative aspects are really where this game shines. The gameplay itself just kind of involves moving downward, jumping, falling, occasionally using a couple of unique abilities to dodge various traps and obstacles while you make your way to the bottom of a tower.
Yeah, it's a fairly standard platformer with a little more vertical,
yeah,
little more vertical scrolling than you'll normally see.
Than the left and right scrolling,
exactly.
For sure. And while it's certainly fun to play, nothing really stands out in the platforming gameplay department, in my opinion, but the game itself looks great. We mentioned in the previous episode that the character design strongly reminds us of the game Bastion in the best possible way.
Right.
The style's awesome, the colors and shading are great, and the story itself and how it's presented to you, in my opinion, is pretty cute and original.
Yeah, it's very neat.
Yeah, for sure. I think Freedom Fall has a lot of heart, is what I would say. So we can go into our verdicts and little explanations, biases, that sort of thing.
Sure. So I, throughout my life, have played lots of platformers, just like most video gamers have, because...
Sure.
You know, back in the day, platforming was just like the standard, right? You had Mario and you had Sonic, and you went on to Crash Bandicoot, and who knows how many. I mean, I could go on and on and on talking about platformers. So I mean, platforming is just kind of like a standard for me. I don't really have any, positive or negative feelings about it, I guess, because it's just, that's, to me, that's like a typical video game.
Yeah,
it's
like neutrality in terms of
it's
games.
Just, it's a fine mechanic, you know what
I
mean? So I didn't really, I thought the art looked neat, and the music on the trailer was pretty cool, so I guess coming into this game, I thought it looked pretty cool. I was excited to play it.
Mm-hmm.
However, getting into the game, like you said, the gameplay was fairly vanilla. I mean, it wasn't particularly difficult, and you run into these forks, and one way says this way's easy, this way's hard, or eventually it says this way's hard, this way's harder.
Yeah.
But the point is, I always went the harder way.
Sure.
And I still never felt challenged, really.
Yeah, and of course there's the immortality aspect, which we can get to later.
Sure, right. But either way, it never felt particularly challenged, and we'll talk about the items more, but the items really added to that.
Make it a little easier.
Yeah, the game looked great. Music was... There were good tracks and there were okay tracks. None of it was bad.
Sure.
The art was really cool. I think I might have already mentioned that
a few times, but
either way,
okay. It's the standout part of the game.
The story, was delivered in a unique way and was fairly interesting. There was like a twist at the end which I thought was really dumb, and overall the story was kind of a letdown for me.
Really?
And I just feel like there wasn't enough to the game. For me, at $9.99, the game just wasn't worth it. There just wasn't not enough content.
Okay, that's fair. In my case, when I first took a look at Freedom Fall, I was immediately attracted to the visual style, which we've mentioned a billion times now. I really liked the music featured in the trailer, and they showed a lot more of the fast-paced platforming sequences of the game in the trailer, cut in with some of like the scenes, like the artwork scenes.
Sure.
That looked really cool. And I love a good platformer, so I immediately got the feeling that it would scratch that itch. Now, playing through the game, while I didn't necessarily get bored, I never really felt particularly enthused by the gameplay itself.
Right.
It was your standard platforming fare, if not a little slower paced than most, and even the boss fights were a bit bland, the two that were there.
Right.
The thing that really kept me playing was the really clever way in which the game tells you its story. The antagonist character, a mean-spirited princess, has basically scribbled notes to you all along the walls of the tower as you make your way down, and there's pretty much always something fun or clever to read, and you continue to learn more and more about the story as you read her snarky comments. I really loved that. I mean, I found myself laughing out loud every once in a while at the writing. There were a few good jokes. And the humor of the game was actually really dark and morbid, but definitely tongue-in-cheek.
Sure.
Also, the various music tracks in the game did continue to be as awesome as the music from the trailer, in my opinion, save one or two tracks that didn't really stand out as much. Now, the major downside of this game is that it's really short. I completed the entire game, including a secret final stage right after the credits, in about an hour and a half. And I'm really, really torn here because while I wish they could have added an extra hour or maybe an hour and a half of content, I still really enjoyed what I got. And it could be that I'm a little biased after playing Needhog, which was even less content for $5 more than this, but I think Freedom Fall, for me, just barely makes the cut and is worth it at $9.99.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and to be honest, I was a little torn myself.
Sure. And like I said, it could be the bias just coming from Needhog, which was a ridiculous ripoff. You know, it made this one definitely seem a little more worth it, maybe than normal.
Yeah, I can see that. I think there just wasn't enough. You know, I mean, it was a little too short, and what was there, you know, just didn't do it for me as much as it sounds like it did for you.
Sure.
Like, you know, like you said, there was the story, the way it was delivered, in essentially chunks of graffiti.
Right.
I thought was pretty clever, but the thing is, because that's how it's delivered, they couldn't really make particularly difficult puzzles because you're reading graffiti as you're going along.
That's
right.
True.
So they kind of had to make the platforming a little simple so that you could still pay enough attention to the graffiti without slowing you down, because that would have been a drag if you went through a complex puzzle, then had to stop, read, go again, stop, read. You know what I mean? It would have been awkward pacing if it was
Yeah, that's true, and I didn't really think about that, how that would affect the gameplay as a whole. And you know, at this point, we can get more in depth with the rest of the game. Like always, we'll start on gameplay. We'll expand on the gameplay. I do want to mention, actually, the controls are pretty tight and responsive. Of course, they're as simple as you'd expect controls in a platformer to be, but, you know, you move left or right, you can press up or down to see above or below you, you jump, you throw bombs, you slide on walls, a lot like in Mega Man X.
Right, yeah.
I didn't have a problem with the controls at all. They were simple, so it would be hard to screw them up, but it's also worth mentioning that I played with a PS3 gamepad, but it was being emulated as an Xbox 360 gamepad, and I had no issues at all. It recognized it immediately. I didn't even have to change any buttons around, so that was nice.
Yeah, I think the controls were pretty good. My only complaint about the mechanics, I think, were the hitbox was a little weird on your guy, I think, when it came to running into obstacles. But mostly it's, you know, because you, like you mentioned, you throw bombs and you can kill yourself with the bombs. And I felt like
easily.
I felt like the area that the bomb hits wasn't.
It was bigger than the graphic.
Exactly.
Yeah,
the graphic didn't accurately depict it, which was frustrating at times when I felt like I was far enough away and I didn't even get hit by anything visually, but I turned out to die, and it was just kind of...
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was so much the hitbox of the character as much as maybe the hitbox of the thing that killed you, because I did notice there were certain things that were only sharp at the point, but not anywhere else, would still kill me when I touched it in the other spot, which... You know, that's a little minor because you kind of expect that. It's like, well, if one aspect of that thing can kill me, I might as well expect all of that thing to kill me. But still, it was a little awkward at times.
Yeah. That was my only complaint with the mechanics because, I mean, like you said, the controls were pretty tight.
Yeah, they were, and you know, that was definitely good.
So, but, you know, to add on to, you know, the jumping and running and bomb throwing and wall sliding and things like that is they gave you items. They gave you a few items.
The gadgets.
Yeah, the gadgets. There's 3 of them that you could purchase. One was a glider, which basically slows down your descent. And then if they have like braziers with big flames in them that cause an updraft, that you kind of get lifted. Your glider would get lifted by the hot air. The next item were these dragon wings, which basically gave you a double jump. And
yeah, they were kind of steampunkish.
A little bit, yeah.
Those items.
Yeah, definitely. The funny thing about the Dragon Wings is when you first get access to the store where you buy your items, because we didn't mention, but throughout the game you're collecting these gears.
Yeah, gears and screws and nuts, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Just little parts.
Yeah, and they're scattered everywhere, and not to sidetrack too much, but it's also worth mentioning that a lot of where you're choosing to go is actually dependent on where you're seeing these little gears hidden about, so you'll want to really look in the nooks and crannies along the sides of the tower to get the big haul of the gears that are hidden about, because you need them later. You really do want to build up those gadgets.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier that you run into essentially forks in the road, and one side will say this way's easy, this way's hard. Well, the harder way always has more parts that for you to collect.
And if you're really good, you can go down the hard way and get all the ones that you collect
come
there,
back up
and then go right back up the easy way doing wall jumps and cool stuff like that.
I did that quite a bit, especially thanks to the Dragon Wings, as I was talking about. The Dragon Wings that give you a double jump are completely overpowered. Insanely overpowered. And what I was going to mention was that when you first get access to the items, it says, buy the glider, you're going to need it. And I was like, screw that, I can afford these Dragon Wings and they're more expensive than the glider. I'm just going to grab those. And from that point on, I honestly didn't have to use... I did use the other items just for the sake of it, but I honestly didn't have to. There wasn't a single situation where the Dragon Wings weren't good enough.
Really? I found a couple times where some of the harder spots, which is really only right at the end, you get to the parts that are actually pretty complicated just because there's so many blades swinging at you and knives coming out of the ground and coming towards you and that kind of thing, and you kind of really have to time your jumps. Where I felt like using it was a hoverboard, which is the most expensive item, which I didn't get until maybe 3/4 of the way through the game because, you know, it costs a lot more. But that one was cool because it really would slow your fall and let you glide really quickly to the left or right, which would, if you timed it correctly, plus, and this is what really made it overpowered, you could literally use your hoverboard to hover over and then switch to your Dragon Wings real quick, do a double jump, and then switch back to your hoverboard and keep hovering. Like, if you were good at timing that, you could really just get through large stretches really quickly.
Sure.
So that was both fun and cool, but also, you know, it made things a little too easy. Took some of the challenge away.
Exactly. There were never a situation where you had to do something neat and clever like that, but you could, just to blast through it even faster. The thing I was going to mention is that with the Dragon Wings, they give you a double jump, and if you do any wall sliding, it resets the cooldown on that double jump. So I was able to... There's situations that you fall down and you're not supposed to be able to get back up, but I managed a way to get back up because those Dragon Wings are just so powerful. Yeah,
it seems like they could have used a little more tweaking on stuff like that. Kind of similarly...
It wasn't balanced.
Yeah, similar to when you play an online game and you realize that some combination of something is overpowered and then the developers really quickly come up with a patch. You know, it kind of felt like that, except of course you don't really expect that to happen in a single-player game like this, so you just kind of stick with it. But, okay, so to move on from the gameplay, the graphics, we've already gushed a trillion times at this point how we like the art style and its resemblance to Bastion. But to go into it a little more, the hero character Marsh and the bratty princess who goes by Emph, E-M-P-H, they both have really cool designs with a lot of color and detail. Marsh specifically, you know, and the levels themselves also have a decent amount of detail. I liked that any traps you die on became blood-stained from that point forward. Little details like that are always cool. Another example would be that you eventually find another example, of like little details that they didn't have to go out of their way to put in there. Eventually, you find like a little nook on the side of the tower, and it's clearly the princess's room, complete with like a canopy bed. And there's a little can of pink paint with some pink splatters on the ground, which obviously references the fact that she's been using that same pink paint to leave all those messages all over the walls of the tower.
Right.
That's just another example. I just really like little details like that, which add more to like the continuity of a game. There's also some short little still image scenes throughout the game that look really cool, and you can actually see more just like that on Lisa Rai's DeviantArt page at risachantag.deviantart.com. That's R-I-S like Sam, A like Apple, Chan, Tag at deviantart.com. And yeah, I mean, I think this game visually accomplishes what it needs to.
Yeah, and I think that was clearly the focus on this game, was the visuals.
Yeah, she's obviously a really good artist and probably thought, hey, this is how I can put my art into a video game.
Sure, yeah.
So, like I mentioned before, the music in the game is really cool. I think I may have liked it a little more than you.
Yeah, I mean, there were no parts that I felt were bad, but I felt like half the music, I was like, oh yeah, this is cool and enjoyable, and the other half was just kind of there.
Sure.
I mean, it got the job done, but it wasn't particularly, I mean, I don't know, I guess there were some parts that got repetitive, I guess, and I don't know.
Yeah,
I think particularly inventive or...
Yeah, some of the types of sounds that the composer used, you kind of heard again later, that kind of thing.
Right.
But the soundtrack was composed by someone who goes by the name of Paramorph on Bandcamp. But sadly, I couldn't locate the soundtrack anywhere or really any more personal information about him. Just one album that he's made, which was kind of cool. It's an electronic album. But Yeah, I mean, I did like the music a lot, and I did want to use it as the bed music in this episode, so I did find a way to kind of rip the music out of the game files.
Sure.
So I'll put that music here for the bed music. I really liked the high quality synthesized instruments that you hear. I think the drum beats really stood out to me, and there were some cool, almost like...
Well, yeah, there were parts where it was only drum beats, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where there's nothing but beats, and I think, I don't know, that part kind of turned me off a little bit because the game wasn't fast-paced enough, you know what I mean? Usually when you think of just like a slamming beat in the background, it's because you're doing something fast and crazy, you know what I mean?
True, that's true. I would have to say I could appreciate some of those beats because they were like well put together, and some of the types of drums that were used, you know, I don't know what to call it, like, you know, it was like an ethnic fusion kind of sound or something like that, you know, and especially like the electric guitar type instrument that you hear sometimes. I don't think it's a guitar. It almost even sounded like not a sitar, but something like that.
It's just a guitar.
Was it a guitar? Because
it's a synthesized guitar.
Synthesized guitar.
Yeah. No, I've heard real guitars sound exactly like that with the Ray effects.
Oh, okay. So the effects on the guitar.
Right. They're emulating a specific guitar sound. Yep.
Type of guitar sound. Okay. Yep. Gotcha. That shows how much I know about, you know, that sort of thing. But I really liked the way it sounded, and there were some cool, like, fast licks. But yeah, now that I think about it...
Those are my favorite parts, with the screaming guitar.
yeah, those parts were awesome, but like you mentioned, and this isn't something I even considered until you said it, it was very fast-paced, and possibly too fast for this game. I didn't really think about that because, I don't know, I liked the way the music sounded.
Yeah,
so.
And I mean, specifically parts where you're just like kind of slowly floating down trying to avoid things, you know what I mean? It's just, it's kind of weird to have like a super fast-paced song in the background.
It's definitely fair. It's a fair point. Now, the story, you know, I guess there's not really too much to talk about there. The reason you're traveling down the tower is because you've escaped from your jail cell, which is located, of course, at the very top of the tower. Like we mentioned earlier, the princess of this kingdom has basically left...
Sadistic, evil princess.
Yeah, it's just this bratty, just terrible, but also kind of endearing. I don't know, like...
I don't know where you got that from. No, she was clearly a sadistic sociopath. There's no other way to put it. She has so many issues, I can't even begin to list them all off.
Yeah, she does leave messages about how the guards would come to, like, clean up the tower on occasion, but it's not her fault. They would trip and fall into the traps and die.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. And that's what I meant earlier when I said there was sort of a dark humor, but it was tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
But yeah, she leaves those messages for you all along the walls, and you're constantly reading them as you make your way down. And when she's not making those horrible jokes about how she expects you to die in agony, she's revealing tidbits about herself, her parents, and the reason why you were imprisoned in the first place, which actually I thought was really cool because, you know, I think something we forgot to mention in terms of the gameplay is that whenever you die, you actually go right back to the last checkpoint that you encountered.
And it comes up with a thematic reason for the checkpoints, essentially.
Yeah, it actually explains to you why you're able to go back to those checkpoints instead of just making it a game mechanic. Because, like, every game mechanic, you have 5 lives or, you know, whatever.
Exactly.
You actually learn why you keep coming back to life, and it ends up being, you know, an important part of the story.
Right.
Which I thought was really cool. And some of the jokes written on the walls did make me laugh out loud. In general, I did find this method of revealing bits of story about an otherwise simplistic game to be just super clever, and you know, it's kind of cute.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on the humor. There are some really funny parts. However, while it was unique the way they delivered the story, I felt like the story really lacked substance because it was almost like, I don't know, it's hard to, you know, it's an unreliable narrator and it's only from one point of view, and it's like so much of what was written wasn't really, you know, important. It was more like jokes or just and then she'd say the same thing over and over again. Like she would, you know, tout the greatness of her dad over and over and over again, and it kind of just like, okay, I don't know why you keep talking about, like...
Yeah, it's not like, that's not even a character you end up encountering.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, good story writing, you know, there shouldn't be any fluff in the, you know what I mean? It was just, I felt like the story extremely lacked substance, and then there's kind of like a twist at the end, and I thought that was really, like, it was really cheap and really cheesy, and I thought it was dumb.
It was interesting how the end worked, because the story almost changed completely depending on which of the 2 paths that you choose.
Sure.
You know, the one path you find out that she says, oh, well, this is actually how it is. And then, or if you take the other path, then she says, oh, you know, this is actually how it is, but they completely contradict one another. So you know, it's interesting how that works because
yeah, I guess I forgot. You know, after I heard about that, I intended to go back and play that level again and take the other choice, and I never did. Now that I think about it, so I don't know what the other ending was. Maybe it would have been different had I seen both endings, but but just having seen the one, it was an obvious plot device. It was really cheap and really disappointing.
Interesting. Maybe you got the ending that I didn't get, though. I bet we got different endings because we never really talked about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's true.
Of course, I don't want to talk about it here. I don't want to spoil anything. But, yeah, you know, and there's a secret level after the credits. I did think that was cool that they threw that in, and it was pretty tough. So, anyway, I really think that we kind of said everything we could possibly have said about that game.
I think we've thoroughly dissected this game.
Next week, I guess we're going to play Octodad.
Deadliest Catch.
Dadliest Catch.
Oh, sorry, Dadliest Catch.
That's the best part.
Of course.
Yeah, this game is actually picking up a lot of traction as of late. For good reason. It looks both weird as hell and completely hilarious.
Yeah, it looks very interesting, to say the least.
And I have the benefit of having played and thoroughly enjoyed the first one, so...
Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with the first game, so I'm excited to... After talking to you about it, I saw some stuff on the internet about it, so I'm really excited to give the game a chance.
Awesome. Alright, well, thanks, guys. Please remember, comment on YouTube, comment on our website, or on Facebook, or on G+, whatever works best for you.
Yeah, and don't forget to check out our website, SharcTank.com. That's shark with a C for see you next time.
Peace out.